Welcome everyone. Welcome to this third session where we are looking at the question, do universities have an obligation to prevent mass atrocities? And for this session, as in the last two, we are asking a few questions. We're asking perhaps your university, association or union has issued one or more statements on Israel's assault on Palestinians in Gaza, the West Bank and East Jerusalem. Perhaps your university, association or union is staying silent. Can you comment on or explain the silence? Perhaps your university has links, contracts, and relations with Israeli private and public institutions, private military contractors, or the Israeli Defense Force. In light of the mass atrocities that Israel is committing, what are the implications of these relationships and links? If your university has not adjusted these relationships, is it complicit in the crimes that Israel is committing? And what effect are the mass atrocities having on your university and on academics, students, and others? How has your university responded, and with what effect? What are the implications of this response? What effect is Israel's assault having on Palestinian students, academics, and others in the university system in Palestine and Israel? And what obligations do universities around the world have towards their own students and towards students, lecturers, and others in Palestine and Israel? For this third session, we are expecting a few speakers. We're expecting 5 speakers. We've got Dan Glazebrook, who is a high school teacher. We've got Ohud Kamau, who is acting chair of the architecture department and assistant professor at the American University of Madada in Jordan. We are also expecting to hear from Maruf C. Shohel, who is a lecturer in research methods at the University of Roehampton. And we're expecting Stefano Portelli, who is a researcher in anthropology and a former University of Leicester postdoc, currently in Italy and working with the University of Barcelona research group. And we've got Nicola Pratt, who is a professor of international politics of the Middle East and is also a member of the Committee on Academic Freedom of the British Society for Middle Eastern Studies. Nicola is a long-time participant in the Palestine Solidarity Movement in the UK. So on that note, maybe we turn to you, Nicola.
Okay, so thank you, Ambrose, for inviting me and for organising this really important event. It's a really it's a really important conversation to have. So as I understand it, we could read out a statement on the topic that we previously agreed with you. So I wanted to speak based on my work that I've been doing with the Committee on Academic Freedom in the British Society of Middle Eastern Studies. I wanted to begin by posing the question, what is worse than seeing genocide unfolding in real time on your TV screens, on social media? It's being documented in newspapers and reports. But what is worse than seeing it is not being allowed to comment on it or to protest against it, which is what I'm going to be outlining in my remarks today. I'm only going to speak about what's been happening at universities in the UK. However, the acts of repression and punishment and silencing that have also been occurring in other institutions, so not just at universities. So, as one of the members of the Committee on Academic Freedom, and obviously I'm working alongside other colleagues on that committee who we've seen our work increase exponentially since October the 7th. So this committee was founded, I think back in 2019, mainly to write letters in protest of violations of academic freedom and freedom of expression in the Middle East. So most of the earlier work of the committee, the first few years of the work of the committee was dedicated to writing to universities and authorities, public authorities in the Middle East regarding the harassment, imprisonment of people there, academic staff, students, authors, researchers, based on things that they had written or said. However, increasingly over time, a lot of our work we've ended up writing letters to vice chancellors of universities in the UK, as well as the UK government. And this was even before the 7th of October. But since the 7th of October, as I said, our work has exponentially increased, and we've found ourselves like really busy in terms of how many letters we've been writing and statements that we've released, some of which are publicly available on our website, but not all of them were able to make public to protect the privacy of those who've been targeted. So the framework for our work is international human rights in terms of the understanding of freedom of expression, and in particular the European Convention on Human Rights, Article 9 with regards to freedom of expression, which should only be limited by criminal law. And our understanding of academic freedom is in line with UNESCO's definition. So in both those cases, freedom of expression and academic freedom include the freedom to say things or research things that may be popular, controversial, or cause offence. And what we're seeing since the 7th of October is an increasing narrowing of what is permissible to be said about Israel, about what Israel is doing in the occupied Palestinian territory, and also what's permissible to be said in terms of support for Palestinian liberation. So just to give you an overview of, I should also say, Ambrose, please, tell me when I'm out of time, just cut me off. The types of violations that we've seen include the cancellation of invited speakers, universities refusing to give permission, or creating unreasonable bureaucratic hurdles to allow the holding of events, refusing permission to hold protests on campus. When protests are held, campus security films protesters. We've seen the opening of investigations into the social media posts or other comments made by staff or students. And even we've seen the referring of staff and students to Prevent. And in at least one case, a university actually called the police on one of their staff members based on their social media posts, which is unprecedented it's not totally unprecedented. This sort of thing we saw during the 2000s, when there was a lot of panic around the war on terror, and there was a case of a researcher being of a university calling the police on a researcher because he was researching Al-Qaeda. But anyway, I mean, it's almost unprecedented. So these actions that universities have been taken come in a context in which the government more broadly has been trying to whip up a climate of fear with regards to support for Palestinian rights, Palestinian liberation, trying to equate support for Palestinians with support for terrorism. With reference to the universities, Gillian Keegan, the Minister for Education, wrote to all Vice-Chancellors on the 11th of October in what can only be interpreted as an incitement to repress freedom of expression on campus. She reminded VCs that the prevent duty requires higher education providers to have due regard to the need to prevent people from being drawn into terrorism, and that universities should pay particular attention to any invitations issued by staff and students on the subject of events in Israel-Palestine. That letter, if you want to read it in full, is available if you Google Gillian Keegan letter to Vice-Chancellors, 11th of October. So this repression of expressions of support for Palestinians and also criticisms of Israel is not totally new. There have been increasing cases of this sort of repression happening previous to the 7th of October. And that's very much linked to the so-called IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, which was a definition that the UK adopted in 2016 and then went on to encourage or coerce all the universities in the UK also to adopt. And the problem about the IHRA definition, it's very controversial because of the ways in which it provides examples that conflate anti-Semitism with criticisms of Israel or anti-Zionism. And in fact, BRISMUS issued a report jointly with the European Legal Support Centre back in September, just a couple of weeks before 7th of October, in which we published our findings looking into the use of the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism in universities and how it was being used to suppress lawful freedom of expression. So I think to finish up, obviously, it's really important that we fight against this narrowing of what is permissible to be said about Israel and what is permissible to be said in support of Palestinians. It reminds me very much of Edward Said's essay from 1984 in the London Review of Books called Permission to Narrate. And it's really striking when you read that essay, just how little has changed since 1984 in terms of the efforts that are made to sort of suppress the Palestinian narrative and to suppress support for Palestinian rights. So in addition to the work that we've been doing through the BRISMUS Committee on Academic Freedom, the other important body that is involved in defending, in particular, staff against these attacks is UCU. So at the branch level, UCU caseworkers have played an important role in defending staff. What's really sad is that actually there's no equivalent really for students. So the National Union of Students or even local student unions, unfortunately, have been pretty useless when it comes to defending students against these sorts of attacks. So yeah, I will just and obviously just to make the obvious point that it's crucial that people feel that they can speak out about what's happening in Israel, Palestine, because what is happening is so grave. And as I started off my talk, my statement, I mean, I think not being able to speak out about mass atrocities that are occurring is even worse in some ways than having to watch those atrocities occurring. Certainly, by not being able to speak out, then you can't contribute to ending those mass atrocities. So freedom of expression is vital in our our weaponry, if you like. Sorry to bring in a arms related analogy, but it's essential for us to have and protect freedom of expression in order to ensure that we can speak out against what's happening now in Gaza. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Nicola. Maybe we ask questions. What is your association seeing? You've referenced mass atrocities in Gaza and also the West Bank and East Jerusalem. What is your association seeing?
Is that question to me, Ambrose?
Yes.
So actually in our so my institution, the University of Warwick, has not made any statement specifically regarding the mass atrocities that are happening. There has been a statement of sympathy with victims of violence in Israel and Palestine, and a plea that people treat each other with kindness and respect. More recently, the university issued some guidelines on for teaching where the topic might come up, which were very alarming because they also seem to be inviting people to self-censor so as not to cause offense. The language was very opaque, but it gave reference to people should be mindful that particular phrases or terms might cause offense, which I think refers to, for example, using the word genocide or using the term settler colonialism or apartheid to describe Israel and Israel's actions in Gaza. My trade union, UCU, the branch did pass a motion, a pretty good motion. I helped to write it. So that was back in the third week of October. And as a result of that motion, that gives the branch, it sort of instructed the branch to do, to support calls for a ceasefire and an end to the occupation, to write to the Vice Chancellor and raise concerns about the limiting of freedom of expression and other to donate money, etc. So that motion was passed with quite quite a large margin of support in our branch. I think what, and UCU National also has supported a ceasefire. I think the issue for me is that at branch level, it really depends on if you have activists in the branch who are willing to, put the time and energy into writing a motion, ensuring that the motion will pass, and then to do the follow-up activities as well. But I think there have been quite a lot of motions passed at other UCU branches. Can I just say something about it's interesting to compare my university's response, and I think this goes for a lot of other universities, the response of my university as an institution to what happened when Russia invaded Ukraine, comparing, and how they're dealing with the situation in Israel, Palestine. So our Vice Chancellor immediately condemned sent a message to all staff, immediately condemning when Russia invaded Ukraine, and all the plasma screens in our university, it was "We stand with Ukraine." The university moved straight away to review all its partnerships with Russian institutions. It has various initiatives to support academics and academic institutions in Ukraine. We haven't seen any announcement even to support Palestinian universities, despite the fact that in Gaza, all Palestinian universities have either been partially or totally destroyed. Many academics, hundreds of academics have reportedly been killed, but my institution and I think I think almost all other institutions in the UK, academic institutions in the UK, have been silent, even when it comes to expressing some sort of concern about academic institutions in a war zone, because in the case of Palestine, whereas there was none, there was lots of support for Ukraine. So that's really, for me, I find that can only be explained in terms of racism, why you wouldn't show the same level of support to Palestinians as you would to Ukrainians, which I find very sad.
Yeah, sorry, can I add something to that? Because I have just recently graduated from maybe one of the most proactive pro-Palestine university in the UK. But even as our university, so we have a Palestine society, it's just a student society. So they show the solidarity for the genocide happened in Gaza and in West Bank. But even for our university, the university per se, they have restricted the voice from the Palestine university. And I have just read a letter from the Julian Keegan, the secretary. It's just made me vomit. It's really disgusting. And yeah, I mean, she said something like the students are getting to the university for getting a degree, not a criminal record. That's not what it should be. The students going to the university to become a better person, not just about the degree. And this really made me really sad. And we had this march. Like the solidarity for Palestine happened just a month ago, just around the Russell Square in London. But you can see the difference. You can see the contradiction. Not very much people they are attending, or you are getting any response from the viewers of the march. So I do think it raised a point of racism here in the UK when people responding totally different about the Ukraine and the Russian war and the Gaza situation. Yeah. I don't know how about in the situation in the States. But
Well, which university?
I was in SOAS.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So that is maybe the university you can imagine the most pro-Palestine university in the UK, but the situation is still very, very bad.
Thank you. And Paula.
Yeah, apology. I hope I'm not interrupting, but I just wanted to say that, I mean, this resonates very much with something that the European Commission has decided to do. I mean, further procedure that they decided to implement, I think some 2 weeks after, the 7th of October and the beginning of the bombing and everything. So they have put in place a further procedure to asking Palestinian universities to prove that they have no links to non-state organization defined as, proscribed as terrorist organizations, which is, I mean, with instead of like, increasing funding and increasing possibilities for Palestinian colleagues and students to, to relocate in safer countries, or in Europe, exactly as it was, it was done for our Ukrainian colleagues. This is what the European Union decided to do when it comes to big funding like Horizon Europe or other big schemes where Palestine is, the occupied territories are, a partner countries. So yeah, sorry, just wanted to contribute that kind of small, if that's the right word, thing.
Thank you. And I think, Victoria, you wanted to say something?
So can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, I'm actually at a choir for refugees. But I was asking which university, but I understand with SOAS what happened. And I was recently at SOAS for a conference, and it was the first time I'd ever been to SOAS, and there hadn't been an occupation during the Gaza war. And it's because Adam Haniyeh, who sold out and was an anti-apartheid activist himself, then because he knows what students do and how to organize, he knows that the quickest and most sleazy way to shut down any kind of protest, which is why they were so fast to act on things at SOAS. Sorry, Adam Habib, sorry, not Adam Haniyeh, sorry, get confused. Yeah, so that was, it's a real shame because it's also where so many other students sort of came to organize previously. With the Ukraine stuff, that was the huge argument that effectively got me kicked out my decolonization committee at Lincoln, where they said that it was the reason why they had solidarity for Ukraine was because it was government sanctioned and supported, and that the refugee scheme for the Ukrainian refugees was a government thing, and so it's got nothing to do with them. And then they said, and then when I said, I said about being racist, I was told to be more circumspect with my serious allegations. And then with the UCU, with my branch, I did manage to also pass the motion in solidarity. But whenever we've held a vigil and when we've brought up the arms and everything in the JCC and the censorship, it just comes back with anti-Semitism. But what's also been upsetting for me as a Palestinian has been how actually the people in my UCU branch were really vocal, and it's only a sort of small vanguard who were really vocal about Ukraine. Like branch wide, they were all going absolutely nuts about Ukraine. And it's only been a small vanguard who have been supporting anything that I do on Palestine. And I do feel very sort of alienated, even though that is branch policy, but only just because we had about 8 people in the meeting. So I sorry, I actually just wanted to vent.
That is allowed. That's one of the functions that the space serves. It's allowed. So thank you very much. Yeah. I'm also thinking, this, what you've raised is noticeable, that that on the one hand, the response, UK universities, the way that they responded to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, was really, really commendable, remarkable. It should be the standard. And then the mass atrocities in Gaza and the West Bank, and also the crimes against humanity in East Jerusalem start, and universities are silent. What is the feeling among members of staff and also among students around this mismatch? I don't know what you call the mismatch, but it's there, and yeah. Anyone can start.
You pose a really important question, which is difficult to answer, because except for that case when we discussed a motion about Palestine in our UCU branch, people don't discuss these things on a day-to-day basis. One of the horrible things about the way in which the universities are organized, these, since the introduction of the fees and the increased marketization of education and growing workloads, is that people, and I think also was compounded by COVID and the shift from in-person to online. But I feel like I don't ever discuss anything of any consequence with my colleagues, except for moaning about how much work we have or what is the latest harebrained initiative. So it's really important that people, at least those people who want to be able to speak about it, have opportunities to do that. And we organized, myself and some other colleagues, and with students, we organized a teach out a few weeks ago that was really well attended, but mainly by students. There were some staff members there, but it's mainly students. So I think my sense is that students are much more concerned than maybe staff are about what's happening, and they want to be able to understand more, and they want and even those staff members who are concerned, they also want opportunities to be able to talk about it. So it's, and I actually didn't mention the experience that we had with the teach out, which is so leading up to the teach out, we decided, because we'd heard that in some cases in other universities, there had been events organized and where speakers in advance might have been vetted or even targeted in some way. So we didn't announce the names of the speakers. It just was advertised as a teach out to discuss what's happening in Israel, Palestine. After the event, the head of security emailed me and asked if in future I would coordinate with him when organizing events on Israel, Palestine. And he copied in the person who's responsible for Prevent on campus, citing our responsibilities for safeguarding. I was really shocked. I forwarded the email to my UCU branch chair, and she responded in a quite robust way. So that was good. He didn't email me again after that. But do you see how that creates intrepidation about organizing future events? And as I also mentioned, my university had already also put out these very problematic guidelines about how to talk about what's happening in Israel, Palestine. This is not creating this is the opposite of creating a climate where people feel they're able to speak about what's happening to gain deeper understanding. Instead, universities are contributing to shutting down opportunities to discuss and understand more about what is happening. And this is the exact opposite of what universities should be doing. So it's really very troubling.
How about you, Paula, and also Kay? What is the feeling among academics and also students that you are in contact with?
Yeah, can I say something?
Yes.
Yes, from what Nicola has said, to be honest, I've been shocked. Maybe I have left the academia for a while. So in my kind of stereotype, I think at least among the intellectuals within the academia, it's kind of a common sense for us to have this at least a solidarity with Palestine. And yes, to some extent, it's also within the campus. I don't know whether it's the stereotype SOAS brought to me, or it should be what it is in the UK higher education. But what Nicola has just said is really a shock to me, and I don't even know that even lecturers, intellectuals here, they are suppressed to voice out. I think the situation is much worse than I expected. Yeah.
So So I would like to comment on Ireland and Italy. So as I was saying before, I mean, Ireland is a safer, for the moment, place. I mean, the government has adopted the IHRA, but they haven't adopted the all of the examples. So, but it's really not, it's not really taken as a I mean, as a framework for actually using it against or waging it against students or colleagues, and there's a general, like, the general atmosphere is extremely kind of pro-Palestine. In my university, I'm part of this Academics for Palestine. It's a national network, but I'm the only one who remained in my university. So to be honest with you, it's been rather difficult to organize, in my campus, but this is not the case for other campuses, especially in Dublin, but not only Cork. Maynooth University are extremely, new branches of Academics for Palestine have also been. Trade unions haven't been particularly, do not have the same function as UCU. It should also be said that, the UK, the current moment comes after, years of mobilizing. So of course not everywhere, but I have the feeling the UCU branches are very, very well equipped in terms of, vocabulary and kind of recent history of, mobilizations, sustained mobilization, which of course is not the case for Ireland. But I do have the feeling that, at least in my experience, looking at this from my campus, I think that we haven't, as staff, we haven't been able to, to satisfy the need and the demand for, teach out occasions for, seminars, just occasions for coming together and discussing that we're coming from, from the student population. So, I reiterate this feeling. The same feeling is in Italy. I have the same feeling for Italy as well. But in Italy, something that I should also mention is that the level of militarization and the level of restriction and criminalization is, is more severe than the one we have in Ireland, which is basically zero, or, close to zero. We have had situations where, a lot of, events have been called off, speakers being vetted. Very recently, we have had this situation in actually my alma mater, so in the University of Turin, where staff members and students have been attacked by the police forces, which before October the 7th needed the permission of the university rector and the university authorities to actually get into, to kind of operate and cross, go on campus. Today, that rule of, of university as, a sanctuary, let's say, is not valid anymore. So this is the second time that the police forces in the University of Turin have gone on campus, and 2 weeks ago actually they have beaten up a colleague as well, who has been in the hospital. Luckily enough, she's a very active, politically active colleague, so she's been able to kind of start off an actual process of kind of using, if you want, this event to to revive and organize politically. But nowadays universities are required by what is basically the different units that locally supervise the work of police forces. We call them questure, so are required by this local representatives, actually representation of the national police forces, to inform them about any event that is being organized on campus that is on the subject of Israel-Palestine, which is, again, unprecedented. There was no requirement of colleagues or students to inform anyone about any initiative that was taking place on campus. But this has changed after October the 7th. And generally speaking, I think, October the 7th has been used as an excuse by several, authorities and institutions to, reform, to introduce new limitations and so forth and so on. I think it's also quite telling the fact that almost every government in the world, every government in Western Europe has used, and I don't know North America, but at least Western Europe has used October the 7th to say that we should, we should vet migrants, we should close the border, we should not let migrants in, especially if they are Arab or Muslims, because they might be anti-Semites, which is a very good example of how October the 7th serves a lot of purposes that have nothing to do with the, with the thing itself, so to say. Yeah, sorry, I was derailing a bit.
I'm also thinking how in the UK, former Home Secretary Suella Braverman directed the police to take a tougher stance against pro-Palestinian protesters. And at the same time that Suella Braverman was doing that, she was also saying that her husband is a proud Zionist. And she was also saying that she's got family who are serving in the IDF. And it is these people who have got connections with groups that are committing mass atrocities, who are also determining policing at the policing of pro-Palestine solidarity. Are similar things happening in universities? Are there parallels in the university system to what we've seen with policing and the Home Secretary? Any of you? Anyone? Yes, Nicole.
So at my university, there have been a couple of protests on campus where the university campus security has filmed protesters, which is unprecedented. And this has also been going on, I think, at other campuses. It's not just at Warwick. So that, of course, is very intimidating. Again, our UCU branch has asked the university, what is the basis for recording protesters in that way? Where's the policy in the university regulations that allows that? Who gave that permission? How are those recordings being used? We do know that it seems that the recordings may have been shared with the police, but I can't go into more detail than that for privacy reasons. But it's very alarming. So although at the moment the chant from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, has not been banned on campus, I think that there's an increasing pressure. I would imagine there'll be increasing pressure I wouldn't be surprised if universities come under increasing pressure to ban it. So again, that guidance that the university put out about how to discuss the current events in Israel-Palestine, it also referred to slogans, that people should be mindful that some slogans may also cause offence. It's undoubtedly referring to that slogan, right? It's a slogan that was specifically mentioned by Suella Braverman in a letter to the police about increased vigilance and increased more, policing of pro-Palestine demonstrations. So yeah, I do believe that that there will be increasing pressure on universities to police also slogans. What I'm really troubled about is that universities are, and of course the government itself, so the government is saying universities have to do more to combat anti-Semitism, and it is, beyond doubt that anti-Semitism has increased since the 7th of October. However, what really concerns me is that the way in which the government is doing this, i.e. by assuming that pro-Palestine demonstrators are anti-Semitic, and then that's being replicated by universities. Universities are being vigilant, increasing their vigilance of pro-Palestine expression in order to supposedly combat anti-Semitism. But this pits different racialized groups against each other on university campuses and the wider society. So it's very troubling to me that anti-Semitism is being approached in this way, rather than seeing anti-Semitism as a form of racism, and racism that affects other groups on campus, and that everyone has an interest in understanding how racism works, and combating it together. Instead, the government and universities are singling out pro-Palestine expressions of pro-Palestine solidarity as somehow being uniquely suspicious of somehow leading to or encouraging or creating a hostile environment for Jewish students. And also there's a lot of slippage in terms so accusations of anti-Semitism per se are not made because there's no evidence for that. Instead, the language of being uncomfortable, Jewish students feel uncomfortable by, for example, some terms, some slogans, and that is really dangerous as well, because if you're using, as I said in my earlier remarks, freedom of expression can only be curtailed by law, by criminal law. You must have reason to believe that some speech is going to break the law, i.e. it's going to encourage terrorism or glorify terrorism, or it's going to incite hatred against a particular group, in order to curtail it. If you're curtailing it on the basis of people feeling uncomfortable, that is that's very dangerous. And also, as I said previously, this is serving to make people feel unable to speak out about the atrocities that are happening in Israel-Palestine. So universities, by silence, by creating this or contributing to this climate of fear, and contributing to the silencing of any sort of expression of solidarity with Palestinians or criticism of Israel's actions, are in effect helping for those to continue, because if people can't speak out about them, then they're less likely, there's less likelihood that they will end, right? It's only through it's only increasing public pressure that is going to make a difference for politicians to change and to shift from supporting what Israel is doing to stopping Israel from doing it. And if that is not going to work, then God help humanity, right?
Sorry, I have a question for Nicola. So if there is no there's no evidence for seeing anti-Semitism, so why there's like the precaution approach to prevent anti-Semitism in the first place? It's logically, it doesn't make sense. It makes me feel like it's kind of like a tactics to suppress people's voice of pro-Palestine rather than there's real anti-Semitism happened already. So why there's all those precaution of anti-Semitism, like letters or these I don't know. Or is it a cultural historical thing? Or
So historically, the UK, as other Western governments, have always been very supportive of Israel. And as you know, Edward Said wrote in 1984, they have tried to they've always tried to silence the Palestinian narrative. I think what we're seeing is a much more intensified version of that. So it's not new to use anti-Semitism, to accuse people of anti-Semitism for opposing what Israel is doing, but it's increased, it's intensified, particularly since the 7th of October. But I would say over the last 10 years, there's been increasing use of that charge to silence people, because Israel no longer can justify what it's doing. It doesn't have the arguments, doesn't have any arguments to justify and explain its behavior. So it's resorting to just trying to shut people down. And unfortunately, we've got a very right-wing government in the UK. I've also noticed the shift since the government became more right-wing after 2019. And there's more people in the cabinet who are strongly supportive of Israel. So there's a combination of factors that have made it have intensified this over time.
I don't know, Cara, did you want to say something?
Not really, but I just want to thank you, Nicola, for partially answering me this question. Yeah, so from an international relation perspective, it's not really merely about humanity or right and wrong, but it's much more complicated. Can I say that?
Well, I'm not sure it's that complicated. The Western governments have an interest, a geopolitical interest in supporting Israel. Israel is a strong ally of the West. So in the same,
because that reminds me something very interesting. So like the Beijing government, although we know they whatever, but it's kind of very interesting. The Beijing government is kind of like a very strong pro-Palestine voice in the world right now. But the philosophy under that is its diplomatic strategy to anti-America.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, I don't think Beijing Beijing only looks very pro-Palestine in relation to the US, right?
Yes, yes.
Beijing's approach to
Kind of like anti-everything the US supports.
yeah, but Beijing doesn't want to alienate Israel. Beijing has a lot of trade with Israel as well. They want to appear balanced.
They want to perform like as they want to pro-Palestine, but just in voice, not in deeds.
Yeah, but
I don't know if there's something like pro-Palestine campaign happening in big cities in China, but yeah. So it
I
always
don't know. I mean, I don't know that for your average Chinese person, do they have any interest in Palestine? This is just a diplomatic issue for the Chinese government.
also a diplomatic issue. I can tell you there's real anti-Semitism happening there.
Okay.
Yeah. So for average people, they kind of like pro-Palestine, but again, their Palestine is based on something that is really anti-Semitism. Not like here, you actually haven't seen any real factors or real evidence of anti-Semitism, but everybody is talking about anti-Semitism.
Mm. Yeah.
And we've also got a comment from Kara Zanini. Do you want to speak to your question or comment, Kara? Okay, so maybe what we do is we have this as our final question, maybe for you, Nicola, and also for UK. What three things do you think universities as institutions and also lecturers and students, what do you think? What three things can they do about the mass atrocities that Israel is committing right now?
Like
Really, yeah, it's really hard to answer that question. It's so difficult because I just received a newsletter from SOAS and they are celebrating because 2024 is like marking the 30 years of anniversary of the democracy in South Africa. So there's lots of Black history events happening at SOAS. And I don't know whether there's kind of maybe in line with in line with South African or Black movement or march or campaign, not to raise the visibility and to hear the voice from the Palestine community, at least here in the UK. Yeah, I even think that the Palestine community here, they are very much, their voice are very much suppressed. I really wanted to do something, but I don't know like how. Yeah.
Shall I go ahead?
Yes.
So there is I think some important things that people can do at universities, particularly through their trade union branch. So for many people that will be UCU, but there are other trade unions on campus as well, such as Unison, Unite, GMB. But there is a growing campaign to get universities to end their ties with arms manufacturers, many of which are producing arms that are being used by Israel in its bombing of Gaza, particularly BAE Systems, is a company that a lot of universities have links with. My own university has some links with BAE Systems. These can either be in the form of research partnerships or apprenticeship placements. So there's a campaign, there's an open letter actually that is currently live, called British University Workers for Palestine, which specifically calls on universities to cut those ties and divest also from companies that fund arms manufacturing, and also to call on university vice chancellors to call for a ceasefire in Gaza. So there's an open letter, but there's also in certain campuses organising going on. So I think that's a really important concrete action that can be done. The second thing is really also about people raising awareness and education. So for many people, they won't have necessarily been paying attention to what was happening in Israel-Palestine before the 7th of October. Unfortunately, the media really only report what's happening in Israel-Palestine when there is the mass violence happening. And so outside of, and then the way the media reports that, they never give any sort of context. So I think having opportunities for people to learn more about the history of Israel-Palestine, to understand the historical context, is also really important. So organising teach out events or inviting speakers that hopefully won't get censored or prevented from speaking by the university administration. But if people should be aware that if they are facing issues of silencing of pro-Palestine events or even just events that are trying to discuss what's happening in Israel-Palestine, then they can contact the European Legal Support Centre, which provides support for people for advocates of Palestinian rights who are being targeted in some way. And also the British Society of Middle Eastern Studies Committee on Academic Freedom. We're always also ready to intervene and support in any way people or groups who have been who are being silenced for their solidarity with Palestine or for trying to organise events or protests, etc., in support of Palestine. Yeah, so that's sort of three things, I think. So one, universities ending their links with arms manufacturers. Two, organising teach outs or other opportunities for people to learn more about what's happening. And three, if you are experiencing any sort of censorship or repression, to contact those organisations that I mentioned.
Thank you very much. And then our final speaker will be Stefano. Maybe if you just dive in and just what is happening where you are.
Hello, Ambrose. I'm very sorry that I wasn't able to follow the entire meeting. I just squeezed it into a lot of things. I think we are all packed with stuff, and in fact, these months have been terrible because I've suspended so much work and things, that deadlines and stuff, because the events in Gaza are calling for as the most important thing that is happening. And this may mean screwing our working life in some moment, but yeah, I'm sorry if I couldn't do it as I would. So the only thing that I can contribute to this meeting, which I will obviously listen to the recording later, is that I am a cultural anthropologist, And well, I think that the anthropological community has been, I think, one of the most quick to answer to the request of Birzeit University for action by academics and university abroad. The American Anthropological Association, as you know, has endorsed the boycott of Israeli University already in July 2023, so before the October 7th. And the EASA, so the European Association of Social Anthropologists, have released a statement which is available on their website, which is, I think, even stronger than us as, like, I would say, grassroots people would expect. So it's very clear in condemning not only genocide, but the genocidal framing of the situation. So I think that for an anthropological community which is really struggling to decolonize, it is crucial to release such statements. And the problem is that I see that these actions have not been actually reported, sometimes even in the websites of the local anthropological association. The position that the global association took are not publicized. There has been, in fact, EASA, the European Association of Social Anthropologists, after the statement has received a lot of letters, especially from Israeli Anthropological Association, which in fact seem to speak against the discipline. There is one statement, like a letter against the statement, which says like things that like Hamas is pure evil. And I would say that anthropology was born to counter this kind of embodiments of evil into people, which is the basis of dehumanization, which is the whole purpose of the discipline, is to steer far from this kind of absolutizations of people. No? So there have also been a lot of letters of support. One, which I consider particularly important, was signed by 200 anthropologists worldwide and asked the European organization to set up a study group on censorship, to report and organize information about ongoing episodes of limitation, restriction to academic freedom. And there has still been no action in this direction, but I would say the steering committee of EASA is very prone to taking action on this, and this is important. So the communities, the local communities I'm embedded in are Spain, I'll say the Spanish state, and Italy. In Italy, there was a meeting of, in Italy, the three main anthropology association of the country had undersigned, had supported, had wrote a letter of support to this EASA statement. And but we are trying to turn this, I'm talking, we as a group of, I say, 40 people that are more active in promoting, especially the academic boycott. We are trying to move this statement of support into an active promotion of boycott to Israeli University. It will not be easy. The local debate is very poisoned. There are Zionist voices in Italian anthropology that obviously, like in Germany, they moved sense of guilt and talk of anti-Semitism for whatever. But I have the impression that, well, we are preparing a report on how the boycott works. Fortunately, in anthropologists, there is a group which is called Anthro-Boycott, which is very active in organizing, promoting, and spreading information on how the boycott works. Our point is that the objection of Israeli University being spaces for dialogue and dissent is countered, is is annihilated in the moment in which you actually open the websites of these universities. In the last days, in Tel Aviv University, there is a statement to support Tel Aviv University in its war effort. So they're actually promoting the military campaign, so there's no space for doubt. Not everybody sees it, but it's rather popular, this opinion among Italian people and Italian anthropologists too. Spain has got further. Both the Basque Association of Anthropologists, which is called ANCULEGI, and the Catalan Institute of Anthropology, which I'm a member of, have released very critical letters mentioning ethnic cleansing, mentioning genocide, and even with a parallel to the suprematist foundation of the Spanish state, which was founded in the material expulsion and killing of Jews and Muslims in the 15th century, and this has a its last episode is the Civil War, in which the idea of pureness of blood, language, and religion was one of the reasons for the atrocities that the General Francisco Franco committed. So people in Spain are pretty radical on this. And the last thing I will say is that the Department of Anthropology of the University of Barcelona has requested to the dean to engage in to boycott Israeli University and to suspend collaboration with Israeli University. The answer of the dean was, as we may imagine, very ambiguous, in which they said that they already checked that there are no military plans involved in their partnerships. So the next step would be asking the dean what is the information that they have, what was the communication that they had with the Israeli universities. So this is more or less the point in which we are. I don't think that there has been a clear message from these places, but the general sensation is positive. People really want to do something. Many people are afraid, but in general, there are strong academic communities which are wanting to do something. So there are also been in Italy signature collection of like 4,000 academics in which is not for Israeli, but for the boycott of Israel, but in support of the international treaties and for ceasefire now. This is more or less what I can say. I'm sorry if it's not a proper structured intervention, but I hope it can be useful.
Thank you very much, Stefan. And then maybe just coming from you, maybe in your view, what are 3 things that you would like the university to do? How would you like them to respond to what is happening with Palestinians right now?
I think the tool we have is the boycott, is the academic boycott. I mean, Italian universities are increasingly collaborating with military structures, and there is already a debate on the need to seize this military drift of research within university. I think this moment is the extreme, the tip of this iceberg. So it is extremely important that the academic boycott is pushed in every single spaces we are part of. I'm not very familiar on what's the strategies to do this, and I will certainly benefit for listening to the whole meeting recording. But I believe that at this point, boycott is the tool that we can try to use.
Right. Thank you very much. And unless there is someone who's got final words that they would like to add, I don't know, maybe I should ask it as a question. Do you have final words?
You're talking to me or to everybody?
To everyone. Anything you'd like to add, emphasize
Ambrose, I just wanted to ask, is there going to be like some like following up sessions or seminars, not directly to university boycotts, but maybe some other themes about the Israel-Palestine issue?
There will be follow-ups. For example, with Civic Leicester, the Leicester Human Rights Arts and Film Festival, we are not letting the issue of what's happening to Palestinian students and academics and also Palestinian people go. We're not letting it go. We'll come back to it, and we'll keep coming back to it until there is until there's sense and there's humanity in how we respond to the plight of people in Palestine and what they're experiencing, what they're being subjected to. So we'll keep coming back to these questions. Yes, Nicole.
I wanted to just ask Stefano about the EASA. Does it have because some associations, they have membership by institution. So there are some for example, the ECPR, which is the European Consortium on Political Research, they have membership is by institution. So they have Israeli institutions that are members. So this was actually, it's good that you were here this evening, because it reminded me that somebody was asking me about what we can do about this and raising the issue of the boycott. And I just wondered whether Stefano, whether the EASA or any other any other academic institution that you're involved in also has institutional membership, including in Israeli universities, and if there has been attempts to raise this issue of boycotting, of basically sanctioning the universities, like preventing them, like kicking them out, basically, wouldn't it? It'd be like kicking them out of these associations.
No, I believe, I'm almost sure what I'm saying. I believe that membership is individual, so it's not linked to the institutions. I've changed affiliation many times, and I've never had to communicate it to EASA. So about kicking out, I believe that the idea of the boycott, at least as it was presented in the AAA, in the American Anthropological Association, is not related to individual researchers. Even if, for example, the AAA, and this is an important precedent that it's important to mention, the American Anthropological Association actually kicked out anthropologists working on the human terrain operation, the US military operation in Afghanistan. So they recruited anthropologists to know better the communities and language of Afghanistan during the invasion. And the AAA kicked out these people as one of the starting point is doing no harm. So, but in the case of the anthropological boycott of the boycott to Israel, the anthro boycott to Israel, individual members are always around, even people affiliated with Israeli University. What they can't do is to act in representation of their universities. So they can go to conferences, they can go wherever they want, they can keep working with their peers, but not representing institutions that are promoting war and genocide. I think this is surreptitious because, in fact, a university may not support you economically if you can't represent them. So, in fact, it has consequences on people. But there are a series of priorities at this point, which I think make the decision valuable.
Thank you very much. So I don't know if okay, let's just have final words for everyone, and then we end on that note. Who wants to start? We'll start with Kay, Nicola, and then end with Stefan.
Okay, yeah, I think I've said what I all wanted to say, and I just wanted to continue the seminar or anything I can work on, or because it's real I'm not like Paula. Even now I can't cope with it emotionally very well, but I really wanted to contribute to any of this campaign, or yeah. So yes, let me know if there's like some seminars or campaigns or whatever there's projects related to that. Yeah.
Thank you. And,
Shall I go?
yes, please.
So I just to finish by saying that there is a lot of pressure on people not to speak out. People are afraid to speak out. And I want to sort of encourage people to overcome some of that fear by joining with others. So I think there are ways that people can speak out, maybe not as individuals if they're scared, but as part of collectives. So if your union branch has not already passed a motion in solidarity with Palestine calling for a ceasefire, then work with other people to get a motion like that passed. If you're not in a trade union, if you're watching this and you're not in a trade union, then find other people who are like-minded in your workplace or in your university or wherever it is you are, and in your discipline, or and come together and issue a statement, so that people don't, because I think it is so crucial that as many people as possible speak out to create that pressure on our elected representatives to get this, to stop the genocide that is happening in Gaza. It will not stop unless politicians feel sufficient pressure. So yeah, don't stop speaking out, even if you don't want to do it individually. Find other people and try and do it collectively.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I would add that my impression, and I would love to know if this is shared, because we are so closed in our bubbles that it's hard to know what's the general situation. But my impression is that despite the fear, despite the the incredible machine of propaganda and in fact outright lies that the Israeli government is spreading all over the world, I've read manuals, I've seen trainings. I mean, it's an incredible effort. Despite all this effort, there is a widespread conscience that this has gone far away beyond what is acceptable, and that the news are not reporting the truth, and that this is not what it's told to be. So I think that the narrative is not holding anymore. And this may have, in fact, this is what Ilan Pappé said recently. They said military, they're maybe winning something, but Israel rests also on its international legitimacy, which is at its lowest, and on its internal coherence of the society of colonizers, which is completely shattered. And maybe it holds together a little bit through the panic of October 7th, but it is also at its lowest. So I have the impression that this shall lead at some point to some important transformation in the region, which may mean what I would love, and I do not live there, so I'm nobody to say it, but I strongly support people who are struggling for a one-state solution in which everybody will have rights and possibility to live freely. I have the impression that this might be the tipping point of something, and that we need to push very much on the tools of counter-information and writing. It's not only statements, it's also articles. It's also writing on web pages, on websites, on academic journals. I mean, we have to flood the public sphere with counter-narrative, because truth is absolutely on our side. So it's only a question of amount of information that is circulating. So even if I'm shattered by what is happening, I mean, it's so beyond anything I've ever seen in all my life, and I'm not so young as I seem. But I also see that today I'm in Rome. The Pope said that what Israel is doing is terrorism. I mean, he said this because yesterday a church has been bombed. This is like, okay, I can say a lot of things about this, but it has gone a bit over the top, no? If the Pope is forced to say something like this. So I think there are possibilities for changing the situation. Maybe it will not be immediate. I don't think so. And there will be a lot of other deaths and suffering before that. But I really hope and think that things will be changing soon.
Thank you very much, and thank you to everyone to you, our speakers, and also to everyone who joined us for this series of conversations. The question that we were looking at was, do universities have an obligation to stop mass atrocities? I use mass atrocities, that is not to minimize or to trivialize the genocide that Israel is committing. Mass atrocities as a category includes genocide. So this set of conversations are going to be uploaded to Civic Leicester on YouTube, and I'll send out links to everyone who attended when that is done. And I'm also hoping that we'll come back to these conversations again until universities start acting more responsibly, because currently how they are doing it is not acceptable. They've got a responsibility, they should live up to it. So on that note, thank you, and have a good evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambrose.
Thank
Well,
you.
yes.
Night, everyone.
Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.